Categorizing video games by genre is a monumentally complex endeavor. Everyone has a different way of defining them, and various aspects matter more or less to each of us. In short, it's a mess. I mean, just look at RPGs for instance. There used to be computer RPGs, a long-forgotten label, to dissociate tabletop RPGs from their digital siblings. There are action RPGs, for when action game isn't deemed fancy enough. There are Japanese RPGs, which get a special category just because they were made in Japan. There are MMORPGs, which have so many letters in their description that we usually end up ignoring the RPG part altogether. There are also rocket-propelled grenades, which don't even have anything to do with our subject today. All this to say that defining a genre can only be made broadly, because games are composite works of art with many nuances. But I want to talk about open worlds today, and I can't do that without explaining at least a little what they are. The very fact of considering them a genre is already debatable. Open worlds are, in essence, games in which the player enjoys a great deal of topographical freedom. From this autonomy of movement comes the capacity to tackle every aspect of the game in any order, at any time. Freedom is the key attribute open worlds are usually tied to. It's hard to pinpoint the origins of this category, because they appeared gradually and their exact definition is fuzzy. We can attest, however, that open worlds gained in popularity in the early 2000s and probably peaked with the release of Skyrim in 2011. Skyrim is Skyrim is a game whose success sparked a craze for open worlds that endures to this day. For over a decade, all RPGs were expected to feature open worlds, and linearity became a pejorative term. The enthusiasm for this genre was such that alternatives were considered inherently inferior, without much actual consideration. We've only recently reached a point where, as if waking from a trance, more and more people have started to see the shortcomings of the open world. I've mentioned how freedom is the key attribute of open worlds. Immersion is probably a close second. But the trouble with immersivity in this type of game is that it relates to the world itself, not the narrative it supports. This can be a strength when handled properly, when environmental storytelling does most of the heavy lifting, when it's sufficiently fascinating to arouse curiosity and engagement, when wandering around is, in a sense, the main story. But far too often, the free-roaming aspect of open worlds competes with the narrative. If a situation must be resolved quickly, exploring the world should not be encouraged. And if the game punishes players who fail to act fast enough, they in turn will perceive this as an affront to their freedom. This liberty to explore the world at our leisure comes at a price, that of narrative engagement. How often have we forgotten what the main plot was asking of us in the course of our gleeful gallivanting?
Thou shalt get sidetracked by bullshit every goddamn time.
In my opinion, the best example of this is Dragon Age Inquisition's hinterlands. They're an open world area that we are asked to visit very early on. In fact, right after their introduction, we are sent there on a quick task, before we are to return to the headquarters of the titular Inquisition and carry on with the main story. Problem is, we are free to explore these hinterlands if we so wish. When you present a completionist with a content buffet, they are bound to want a taste of everything on the menu. Exploring the hinterlands takes forever, as they are vast and filled to the brim with boring side quests and unoriginal fillers. By the time you're through, at best you'll have forgotten the game's plot. At worst, you will simply stop playing, because this type of tedium is hardly a good look for such an early stage of a game. All this was so bad that for a time the internet overflowed with memes and warnings saying, "Please leave the hinterlands." This breach of immersion in the narrative is devastating for its pace. Imagine a movie or a TV show being interrupted by commercials. Oh wait, that actually used to be the case. So imagine a book regularly interrupted by a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku. You might enjoy these activities on their own, but there's no denying such ruptures do a disservice to the carefully crafted story being told. In games, this issue can be alleviated by keeping the side content thematically in sync with the main plot. When every detail and mission around you serves as a reminder of your place in the world and the story you're experiencing, what could be counterproductive distractions then become useful boosts to the narrative immersion. Why then are the myriad of side activities in so many open worlds detrimental to the enjoyment of the narration? Because they are mere distractions, sprinkles on a donut if you will, contributing a little to the overall flavor. Often, this filler content seems to be put there for no other reason than to saturate empty space. It's expected, so it is done. This is well exemplified by the Ubisoft template. Hidden parts of the map are revealed by tagging a tower, and all nearby content is then marked for us dutiful completionists to tick off one by one. If you unveil all of these activities at once, their icons actually cover the entire surface of the map. It took years, decades even, for Ubisoft to grasp that actual stories involving unique characters were of more interest to most players than picking up abstract collectibles. Why do they clutter their maps with so many meaningless activities? The idea is to give players something to do all the time. When navigating these worlds, you encounter a new task at least every minute. It's vital to keep the audience engaged as long as possible, because studies have shown that in games with microtransactions, time spent playing correlates directly with the revenue from these transactions.
And there was much rejoicing.
But how to encourage engagement with such dreariness? By rapidly cycling through these activities. This is a principle called the Skinner box, after the puzzle cages used in animal behavior studies. An easy task with an immediate reward releases endorphins right away, and we press the buttons again and again without having time to realize that what we're doing isn't interesting. If mindless side activities are Skinner boxes, Ubisoft is a whole Skinner moving truck. This tradition of fluffing up gaming spaces with fillers is strange when you think about it. Almost every other art form in its creative development revolves around making more than the final product and then trimming it down. This process of removing the lesser parts of a work and refining it to keep its best elements is essential in many other domains, so why not video games? Why is ours the only art that adds more and more in its creation? And while I know this isn't entirely true, as the production of a game leaves a lot of cuttings behind, the fact remains that too many games are stuffed with low-quality content for no other reason than to appear bigger, as if gigantism were a sign of quality. Baldur's Gate 3 is a great counter-example of pretty much every point I've made here. It's huge, yet everything we come across is original and carefully thought out. It gives players complete freedom and still manages to keep us on board with its main plot. But it's important to understand that Baldur's Gate 3 is an exception, an incredibly complex tour de force. It is a colossal project that didn't compromise with the idea of low-quality fluff. games like these will not and cannot become the norm. We are slowly starting to move away from this notion of a massive scale being a strong selling point. A more visible and accessible indie scene, coupled with the impending collapse of the AAA business model, have led to smaller games, as well as a renewed interest in more narrative-driven linear stories. I know it's my leitmotif, but diversity is once more good for the gaming industry as a whole. The open world craze limited creativity for almost 2 decades by giving both players and publishers immutable expectations. Don't get me wrong, I love roaming through open worlds myself, and I believe there will always be room for these games. But we need to accept that with high expectations of quality comes a reduction in quantity. Open worlds should take their place as a genre in its own right, not as an overbearing figurehead. They must become more scarce to ultimately become better.